What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be breaking down the top 15 tight ends in the 2025 NFL Draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. I've been making content like this almost every single day, so if you do love the draft, if you do love football in general, college football, this is the place to be. We're on our road to 15K. We should be hitting it by the end of the month, which is super awesome. Thank you guys so much. It's been a meteoric rise, and so I only have you to thank. It's been awesome. We're going to continue this journey on, and we're closing on 5 years of the show, doing this damn near every day, so it's going to be great. But I'm going to be giving a full breakdown of a single game from my scouting report for each of these players. And so it's going to be super exciting. These are the 15 that I have graded so far. There are some other guys that I'll probably be getting to as time goes on. I want to see combine numbers, want to see them at the senior, the shrine, before we actually end up making everything official. So I'm trying to get all this in before the combine for all the positions because I want to make sure that we can end up doing the biggest list at the end. So I'm super excited for that. Let's get into this though with the understanding how I grade these players. And it's a 1 to 100 scale that is going to also be broken down into different roles, different tiers. And so there are going to be grade specific roles, and I will be making videos after I end up making the final list on basically if you need a receiving tight end, this is who you need. If you need a blocking tight end, this is who you need. But you guys will get a sneak peek in this episode because I do have the role that I think they're best in on the board as well. But it is a 1 to 100 scale. 80 plus is going to be like legitimately elite blue chip. We don't have any of those this draft, but we do have legitimate high-end starters. That's that 75 to 80 tier. We have a couple of those guys who I really, really like. That tier 2 are the ones 75 or 74.9 essentially down to 70. And those are the guys who I think are going to be a little bit more of those guys who could be working as a committee of tight ends, which even the starters can work as a committee. But essentially, I don't think that you're somebody where if you are on my team, I'm not going to look for another option that could potentially be a larger role in the offense. But of course, in the right situation, in the right scheme, I think all these guys can take a step up. I'm super excited for that. But again, we'll get to those videos when the time comes. Tier 3, which is going to be 64 up to 70, is developmental tier. I think it's going to be great to be able to see those guys be able to have a particular role on a particular offense. That's why it's going to be a little bit more role specific. And then tier 4 are those dudes who I think either there's going to be a little bit of a lack of athleticism or maybe a lack of polish to where I don't think they're going to have a legitimate ceiling of being an every down starter, which it's okay. There's only like legitimately at most 64 tight ends that take enough reps to be classified as a starter or a flex. So it is worth putting that in there. But of course, you also have to understand how I grade the player. Route running, pretty self-explanatory. Are you a crisp route runner? Like, do you flip your hips well on 45-degree cuts like slants, posts, etc.? Do you actually run hard cut routes like hitches and all that? Very well. And so I think that's super duper key. Run after the catch is a very key category as well, though. It is not just simply like, oh, can you run after the catch? Because I think that's more into the speed and burst category, which is going to be very affected by the combine as well. Like, I would say it shouldn't necessarily knock players unless it's egregious, but it also is something that could give us a lot of clarity to where, we'll see, we don't know exactly how much effort they put on certain plays, but it might determine a little bit of a shift. But regardless, run after the catch is also, do you make guys miss? It's not based on the statistical missed tackles forced, because there's a lot of variance in college to where defenders don't always know how to tackle. So if you break 30 tackles of players who would never play in the NFL, then to me, you really have the traits of being able to break poor tackles, but I really am focusing on those 7 that would be versus for a Farrell fan, and I'm not saying that's exactly what he did at all because he graded really high, but it's just an example. Like, I'm going to focus a lot more on the translatability of your run after the catch, whether you can push for extra yards, whether you are a little bit elusive on the field and be able to just not be easy to be brought down. Because a lot of tight ends, I wasn't a big fan of Michael Mayer for this reason. Just not necessarily that type of player to like just be someone who could be great after the catch in the NFL. Like, that's super key. It's not just in college, it's in the NFL. Blocking, super key as well. I think that's a very underrated category. If you're not going to be a slot receiver as a tight end, you do need to be able to block, and we are blessed in this class. Even the lighter tight ends can block very well. So stay tuned for that. Separation. So what I know is some athletes or some tight ends aren't the best at route running. They aren't the best athletes either in terms of speed and acceleration, but maybe they're good in acceleration, but maybe they're not. They're just really strong and they know how to get open. That is super key as well in the NFL. Maybe not for a number one tight end, but that's why he'll score worse in other categories. It still score well in separation. Separation's hard to score well in, though. I mean, sitting in soft spots, it requires good IQ, etc. Speed, kind of straight line speed, play speed. But again, this will be affected by the combine a little bit. That's where we might see a little shift. Burst off the line and through routes and after the catch as well, all play into account there. Hands, it's pretty much based on drop rate. Thank God for Tyler Warren. He had like a 15% drop rate the year before. That's the main reason why he really jumped up this year too. Contested catch, very similarly. Are you going to be reliable at the catch point? And then versus press, it's super key. It's actually the heaviest weighted category for, well, I grade a lot of positions talking about press coverage in the receiver room, running back room, etc. when I'm grading receiving. And this is the heaviest weight because I think it's super key when you're going up against the linebackers. Are you physical enough to win that matchup? And that also plays into separation. That plays into route running. Like, how are you going to be able to be versus press? Do you have a good release package? And so it kind of combines it into there. And if there is something like great motor, like Gunnar Helm, I love his motor, then you can look into it factor, and that can end up being something that adds a little bit of something where my grading scale does not. Don't take the dream fits too seriously, but let's get into this. Let's have a good time. We're already 5 minutes in. Starting out with Gavin Bartholomew. I got to see him in person here at SMU, and let's talk about his game versus Clemson, because I'll talk holistically after the fact. I might as well just break them down, and then we can end up talking about the overall point of view. But versus Clemson, he started out the game, and by the way, I write my notes in a way to where if you were sitting next to me, these are my thoughts as I'm watching these plays. They're not designed to be, hey, this is the good, the bad, the ugly. It's not super concise like that. I want you guys to watch a game with me without watching a game with me. Copyright issues. But versus Clemson, he starts off the game by having a nice crack block on TJ Parker. He has a little bit of nice twitch off the bat. One play, he looked a bit speed capped, which again, you'll start seeing my thought process as to why my grades are the way they are. Another great seal block on TJ Parker. He is a limited athlete overall. Slow in route, so basically didn't do a good job running it in route. Very underwhelming as a receiver. He's been targeted one time so far with not many primary looks in this offense. So I actually want to take a pause there to talk a little bit more about that. I ended up loving Braden Swinson. You can check out my 83-minute edge video. And I broke down how when an offensive guard, Jaden Roberts, ended up getting hurt for a play, they put in a backup. And you can tell who has the trust of the defensive coordinator based on who he's going to put in the weak matchup, who's going to take advantage of that. And Braden Swinson was that. Similarly, in an offense, when an offensive coordinator is designing plays, if you're a reliable weapon, especially translatable to the next level, they're going to scheme you to be a primary read on a noticeable amount of plays. You think about Travis Kelce, he is a notable primary read on a lot of plays for Kansas City. And so Gavin Bartholomew, even in college, wasn't showing that. And he had an early season-ending injury last year, so if I'm not mistaken. So I do think that, he has some slow moments getting out the gate. But continuing on, though, he flashes some upper body releases. So that's why versus press, C is adequate, by the way. Versus press, it's higher than maybe some of the other categories. And that's super good for him. So upper body releases, if you guys don't really know, because, it's technically not an official term, but it's like hand fighting down the field, doing a little swim move action, basically getting by the defender without just speed or physicality. Like, that is more of a technique thing. So if you hear me say that, that's what I mean right there. He has some monster blocks or monster reps while he was blocking. He was pissed at himself for missing a block. I love seeing that. He ended up missing again, but he actually ended up pissing off the defensive linemen. So they start getting a little bit agitated, and I love seeing a tight end that's willing to do that. That's always fun to see. His pass blocking is a bit worse than his run blocking, which is why he did not score into the A category for blocking, even though B+ is great. He flashed some run after the catch vision on a messed up sweep play. Good track on a gold line fade, catching traffic on the sideline. So, you could end up seeing that, I do have certain categories like run after the catch versus press blocking, and you'll see certain plays to where I started feeling confident enough to say they're adequate at the NFL level in that category. But Gavin Bartholomew, it was a bit underwhelming, especially for someone who I was kind of hoping, especially at 250, to be a bit of a better athlete, to be a little bit more dynamic as a weapon. But being a great blocker, being in Pittsburgh, I mean, that's a really good foundation as it is. I could totally see him being a really solid chess piece going forward. Quick little note here. I actually ended up adding a player and then ended up moving Gavin Bartholomew back a spot to 16. Also realized I ended up putting the wrong roll grade on there, so caught myself right there, but that's the bottom line of the grade. Let's continue on to CJ Dupre here, and I really like CJ Dupre, but this guy literally has had 777 yards over like 4 years. The guy doesn't produce. I mean, technically speaking, neither did Gavin Bartholomew to a high degree, but CJ, I really love the dude. I do think that, you know, Alabama kind of shellacked my guy, if you will. But let's talk about his game versus South Carolina this year. So very unnoteworthy to start the game. He's a mediocre athlete, and he has an okay release package with a mediocre change of direction ability, which leads to very little separation. He does try to use route and release fakes, but he's not really explosive enough. So, you know, whether that's like twitching your head to the wrong side or like to the opposite side, trying to make a defender guess, route manipulation, if you will. But it doesn't have the necessary route running crisp to be able to make enough of a difference in separation. So not a great blocker so far either. Ended up changing as the game went on. So he had a stiff zig route. His vision's actually quite solid after the catch. He does a ton of hesitation steps every cut. Like, bro, sometimes stick, or I said, basically I got frustrated with him. I said, bro, sometimes just stick your foot in the ground and go. Slowest double move I've ever seen. Overwhelmingly underwhelmed. So yeah, CJ Dupre, like, I ended up saying he's not a great blocker for the moments of the middle of the game, but overall, I mean, for other games as well, CJ Dupre has been a very reliable blocker, even versus edge rushers. He, of course, is going up against legitimate star edge rushers, though. So, you know, they're NFL edge rushers he ends up doing a good job against, but during that game, not so much. But CJ Dupre, definitely someone who could be a very big stock up kind of guy. I'm excited to see where he lands in the NFL. Mitchell Evans is next. He was my tight end one coming into the year, ended up having a season-ending leg injury, and totally lost all the excitement that I had for him, which really sucks. And he's had a pretty mediocre year. I don't think he's going to declare necessarily because he has until the 24th too, and it's the 18th today. But stay hydrated, kids. ASMR for you guys for free. But yeah, let's talk about his game versus Florida State. It was kind of a ball crusher for me because I love Mitchell Evans coming to the year. First off, he's not overly explosive on a flat route. He had a horrible stop route as well. Solid leg drive for the run after the catch, but he's not a good athlete. The injury really took a number on him. He has just regressed so much. Literally seeing it near a UDFA now, damn. I don't know how much more I need to see to call this guy not draftable. One thing he did well was a 45-degree cut on a post. Uses some physicality to generate an inch of separation. He started to flash a little bit with some more nice stutters. So he ends up like pretty much doing some stutter steps and trying to at least make the defender second guess what they're going to do. He had a touchdown on an actually solid fade with a nice release package. Solid at blocking defensive backs. Great drive in the run game for a key touchdown block. Great contested catch over the defensive back. So, I mean, pretty much that summarizes everything that I end up putting on here. He's a solid blocker, willing to even do it against defensive linemen, but also kind of a dominant guy down the field on the second level. And then you look at him, and he's somebody who's just very reliable. And that release package does end up coming into play, right? Versus press is an adequate level for the NFL. He's a solid-sized tight end. I do think that he probably should return to school, but at the same time, Mitchell Evans was someone who I really liked even with Michael Mayer there as a true freshman. I do think that that leg injury really did a number on him, though. So I'm hoping that maybe he can return and end up having a really solid career after that. Malik Matava is next. He's a Senior Bowl invite. That's the reason I added him. So there you go. You get that one right there. But Maliki is fun. Let's talk about his game versus Penn State. So starts out the game. He has a solid wide base on his first run block. He actually graded B- is a very solid grade on blocking, by the way. Number 17 on, I actually ended up shouting him out too. He's actually, man, I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head. He's now on Minnesota as well. I think it's something Loya. So you can feel free. I think it's Logan Loya. That might be his name. Really good player. So I'm excited to see him for 2026. I digress. I write these notes for myself. Very unathletic off the bat. He has a solid hitch route, not elite in run blocking. Really nice, quick corner cut. So he does have some weird flashes of awesomeness. So I do have some debate as to whether his play is going to be like consistently good or consistently more on the mediocre side. But I do like to see that there's those flashes there. I digress though. Showing some better movement skills and even some run after the catch on a tight end screen. He got stopped by press coverage, so that's something that's super key for me. If you're getting jammed by a corner or a safety, and they're not like known to be one of the most physical safeties or corners, I'm going to have an issue with you as a 260-pound man getting absolutely bitched by a 200-pound player. I'm just going to be so real with you. And so I do have that a little bit of a worry there with Maliki there. I do think he's going to do well in Mobile, but let's get back to the notes. He ended up dropping a pass on a flat route. It was like 1 of 2 in the year. He ended up having a nice catch in traffic on a drag route, a couple nice seal blocks as well, some small flashes of route running. There you go. He had a flash of an upper body release, again, talking about like the hand fighting and being able to get position with their upper body. Has a hard time climbing to block the second level. Overall, nothing too crazy. So a really solid foundation, though. He's a reliable player with some great flashes. If you want to take him in the 6th or 7th round, I'm not going to complain at all. He's a very, very good player. I do worry about the Senior Bowl being too stacked to where Maliki might have some issues being able to shine amongst the rest. But, I certainly think he's a solid player. Worth some consideration, Ben Urosic is next. Ben's a super fun player. He was really good there at Stanford. Ended up dropping a little bit with his grade, but still kind of feels the same type of guy. He used to carry the ball arguably as much as he caught it there at Stanford. It was pretty awesome. But he ended up transferring to Georgia, and let's talk about his game versus Ole Miss. So it was, first off, a mad game overall, statistically. He started off with a great block off the bat. He transitioned well, and then he ended up it was funny. The first 3 reps of the game, he blocked unbelievably well. And then he was absolute garbage for the rest of it. It was so funny. Then he so I ended up saying he ended up starting the game well versus the run. Then he started whiffing and lunging on pull blocks, leaned too far forward on an open field block. He whiffed again. When blocking, he fell. I said blocking fell off a cliff. He ended up having a drop, and I said his athleticism really does feel more capped than it was the year before. And there wasn't really anything notable about him versus Texas as well. I'll toss this one in here. Like, just starting out the game, he missed the edge on a block. He ended up fixing it the next time, though, and then he ended up having an awful missed block in open field. So I just really thought that overall, Ben Urosic was a little bit underwhelming compared to what he was the year before, which is a really good gadget piece. And I still could totally see it working out for him in the future, but I think the probability is noticeably less. Then we got Oronde Gadsden II out of NC State. He's a really fun player, man. Really fun player to watch. He's smooth. He added an additional, 13 pounds. He was 223 last year. So he's up to 236, which is good to see. But you can see it. I do have some concerns about his overall athleticism, but a lot of the polish is really good there. But let's talk about his game versus NC State. So nice catch in traffic off the bat. He's slow, but he can flip his hips well. He's flashing hand fighting at the line of scrimmage, exclusively in the slot. And I said, oh, this is going to get me in trouble. I said he has a low-key pussy block. He does not have that ferocity when he blocks. Dude goes 2 miles per hour and then does a hitch. He has a smooth 45-degree cut, but he looks like he's running in quicksand. He is very smooth. Can slip poor tackles, solid seam catch in traffic. Honestly, a solid route runner. Number 2 on this team, apparently on Syracuse, is twitched up. I don't know the name of the guy, but again, writing notes for myself. Lack of creativity post-cutting on the route. So if you do a hitch, essentially, like you just turn around in zone and then the linebacker goes and hangs out with you, there are tight ends that will continue to move to get open. There are tight ends that will sit there. Oronde's the type that sits there. Solid corner. He ended up not getting targeted on that play. Another missed touchdown opportunity because he was not targeted. Thank you to Kyle McCord. But Oronde Gadsden, very fun player. I just do think the athletic limitations could get in the way of him being truly successful. We'll see over the offseason. Maybe he trained for the combine and really improved his athleticism. If that is true, then I think that we're off to a really, really good start with Oronde being a big riser in the postseason process. Gunnar Helm is next. I love Gunnar Helm. I love him to death. Like, don't get me wrong. People are going to get mad if he's at number 10. This is a very good tight end class. It's a very tight tight end class, too. I think he's certainly a role player in the right system. He could absolutely be almost an every down kind of guy. But I don't know if he's going to be a true tight end 1. And it primarily is because he's not a great route runner. But you get the ball in his hands, he's great. Like, you get the ball, or he's like blocking for you. Obviously, the Texas running backs had a lot of open territory because, well, did a good job. So, might as well give you some free ASMR before we get into Gunnar Helm. There you go. We love that, don't we? But let's get into this, starting out with the game versus Georgia. Is that the only game I'm providing for you guys on this one? Damn, that's a long-ass report. Buckle up. We're talking about him versus Georgia. This is worst graded game. Solid job finding a soft spot. English is tough. For a hitch route and drifting away from the linebacker in coverage. Remember I was talking about that creativity? There you go. Good job using leverage to lean the shoulder and get separation on a cut. So I also love that as well. It did end up kind of fading as the game went on, but let's continue. Does such a good job at being sudden and flipping his hips, especially on hitches and soft spots. Does such a good job with that lean to flip cut. I have no idea what the fuck I was talking about there. But leaning in and then flipping his hips to cut. He's not afraid to block. He was toppled when he was lunging as a run blocker. Should have had slightly overthrown. He should have had a touchdown, but Quinn overthrew the ball. He subtly drifted from faking a screen block to doing a fade very well. I don't think he's a top-end athlete, but he's far from a bad one. So, as you can see, adequate to adequate plus. Would like for him to have a little better awareness of where the ball carrier is when he is blocking. I did realize that. When in line, this is not an issue. So the blocking awareness. So it's more so when he's in the slot. Would like a little more headhunter mentality when blocking, but he is far from afraid of it. He let up a sack in pass pro on one-on-one versus an edge. Can't really blame him, but could be better. Needs to be a better enforcer when blocking. He just chipped a linebacker with his shoulder and let up a tackle when he easily could have walled him off and allowing a bigger gain. This was in a run block. He ended up chipping a player rather than actually blocking him. That linebacker that he chipped ended up being the one who made the tackle. I still want him to be more enforceable as a blocker. Will not gain separation with speed. Good job carrying defenders for extra yards. He ended up having a drop on a flat route. He can be altered by press downfield when running out routes versus outside leverage. We'll need to develop that in the league. So when you're running a route that is going directly into where the defender is shading, there's a new level of route running that you need to have to be able to get into proper position for that. And Gunnar Helm is still definitely developing in that territory. He has degraded as a route runner as the game progressed. So Gunnar Helm, bottom line, reliable, fun, still a lot of room to grow. But Gunnar Helm is a very good player, has a very good work ethic as well, just has a pretty low contested catch percentage as well, which, dropped his grade a bit. But excited to see him in the league. I think he can continue to progress and end up being a really, really good player. Jalen Conyers is next. This is someone who I've been notoriously pretty damn high on for a while. And, let's talk about his game versus Baylor. No targets this game. We actually ended up having a couple games, but he had no targets versus Baylor, but it was versus good competition. So I'm like, did you not get targeted because you're not good? And the answer is no. He's pretty damn solid. He's so twitchy. 18 as well. The other player is really damn good. Nice chip block on a flat route. Heavy rotation. Yeah, Texas Tech, man. A lot of rotation there. Honestly, a solid blocker versus defensive backs. Very solid athlete in short space, but also pretty well overall. Used as a crack blocker a lot. He ended up having a throwing touchdown this game too. Great seal block leading to a touchdown. Leading to a touchdown. 2 on Baylor is doing a great job. I ended up putting a little mark, like a less than sign, but I think I actually meant to do a comma. Oopsies. But number 2 on Baylor is doing a great job. So whoever that is, shout out to you. Very limited route tree this game. Can get bounced around versus press coverage. But let's talk about the game versus ASU, which is the lowest graded game, but he ended up getting 4 targets in this game. Lowest graded game. Solid pull blocks off the bat. Good twitch and vertical speed. Is a little bit more capped than I initially thought. Nice strong plant when he ended up doing a slant route. So smooth transition. He dropped a jet sweep pass. Could be a little bit more lethal with his head fake on cuts. He ended up dropping a flat route and then another drop catch in traffic after a solid out route. So that was by far his worst game as well. I wanted to see why he struggled, and I do have some concerns with that, but overall his his drop percentage is pretty damn reliable. So I'm not going to really get on him for that. But a 265 player who's pretty damn solid in space, who improved noticeably this year as a blocker, something I really like to see right there. Then we got Terence Ferguson next. I really like Terence Ferguson a lot. Very good player. As you can see, he's pretty much adequate or better in every category except for how efficient he is as a contested catch guy. So let's talk about it versus Ohio State the second time around. Great seal block on Jack Sawyer. Solid job sitting in a soft spot. He's a long strider. There's lower explosiveness with an okay top speed. It's very rare that you'll see that. A lot of times these guys are twitchy in space, but they just don't build up speed like that. Terrence Ferguson is just a really long strider. So he'll need to work on that. And it's something that easily could boost him up in the rankings, by the way. With a good 40 time with a 10-yard split that improves, it's like, okay, well, all of a sudden, you're using your feet in a less long stride way. So it could easily boost him up. Really good job with swatting the hands downfield. So that's why he does a good job versus press guys try to get their hands on him. He's swatting their hands down and getting good position. Nice job getting the extra yard and running after the catch. Would like a little bit more oomph on his short cuts. Some weird timing on these drag routes where he feels really slow. Route running definitely is not supreme, but it's also not ass. Solid blocking rep versus JT Tuimalau. He did end up holding, though. Good IQ for sitting in zone coverage. He has not shined at all in the red zone. That's a little bit of a negative right there. I could have dropped him a point for that. But he adjusts his routes post-cut for the play, so that is good. That's why he has a +2. He's I have these clips over on my X page as well. You guys can go check it out. But this specific note comes from Terence Ferguson essentially being on a drag route and then realizing that there was some open space upfield while Dillon Gabriel was scrambling, and he actually ended up redirecting his route and being a very good playmaker right there. So I love playmakers. Big thing for me, especially at the tight end position. Good drag and run after the catch. Number 10 apparently flies on Oregon, so shout out to him. Destroys defensive backs and does well versus other defenders blocking-wise. He flashed the shoulder dip to avoid the press, so basically someone's trying to press him here. He lowers his shoulder, so think about a boxer kind of slipping and ripping. That's the exact same kind of thing for both wide receivers as well as tight ends. Honestly, I could totally see him being a very good tight end too, which again, if he did not have I think it was somewhere in the 20s or the 30 percentile for contested catch percentage, if he did not have that, this dude would easily be a tight end too right now. Just got to put that out there. But continuing on, we got Luke Lachey, who I was noticeably lower on than everybody else until this year. I mean, I don't know. This is the JT Tuimalau of tight ends here, but dude had a season-ending injury last year, and not necessarily the most statistically amazing year for him. But let's talk about him versus Ohio State. One of his better games overall. Solid twitch while blocking, but he ended up nearly eating shit because he was over-leveraged forward. He's whiffing on blocks because he's using his shoulders over his arms. So basically, you're ramming players rather than actually, blocking them. He's a solid athlete, so ended up being a really good athlete. Catching traffic, so I always love seeing if guys can be able to handle a catch over the middle of the field, especially when you are going to be doing over the middle of the field. He does not handle press all too well. He's not seeing much more route running, more so just running open. So, that's basically what I was saying. He wasn't running routes on a lot of plays. He was more so basically running a very messy route to get open. It was interesting. He had a solid hitch route, really has a hard time getting past press coverage. He had a met out route, had some flashes of excellence as a blocker, would not say elite, but maybe high-end pass protection. Appreciate his ability to stick and cut on 90-degree cuts. He can also lean into his cuts as well. Cuts are another word for when you make a cut in the route. Kind of elongated 45-degree cut, so not much separation. Finally, use some more physicality to get separation on an out route leading to a catch. Flash of contact balance, jumping for a first down. Another catch in traffic, falling forward for a first. I ended up posting that one right there. Pancake block. Always got to love to see those. Adjusted his hitch route to get into the soft spot. Needs to watch out for lunging when run blocking because he has whiffed a few times, and it is not a skill thing, just a leverage issue. Much better leverage the next play and a much better block overall. He is a run after the catch king, just juked a defensive back. Overall, really impressed, to be honest, especially coming off a season-ending leg injury. Ended up having a small little bit of a note versus Iowa State to kind of confirm or deny whether that game, because this was his worst graded game. But Let's talk about it. Worst game, but it was also early in the year, so he's coming off a leg injury. So it started out the game. He ended up having a key pull block. He ended up missing a block from a slot cornerback blitz. Not going to fully blame him for that. He ended up having a drop on a bubble, but overall the game ended up just kind of confirming everything that happened in the Ohio State game. So Luke Lachey, a lot of prospect fatigue because people thought he was going to be a legit first. I still think he's going to be a very good tight end. I mean, a lot of people just didn't love Eric All. I liked Eric All, and so I think Luke Lachey is going to be a very good player as well. He was up to 253, and I think he'll get back to there. He also apparently doesn't have an elbow because the remove.bg ended up apparently taking out his elbow, but you guys can end up enjoying that in the comment section below. Then Elijah Arroyo is next. I know a lot of people have him top 50 on their board, but I just haven't really heard anybody take him in the first 3 rounds. I haven't heard enough hype about it, but Elijah Arroyo is a stud, man. I'm a big fan of him. So let's talk about his game versus Syracuse. He flies off the line and he flashes a hand chop downfield. Like the first rep, I was like, oh shit. It's like, oh, all right, we see it. He misapplied an arm chop downfield, so he basically swatted air. Sometimes you need to know when and where to counter. He does not have very crisp routes overall, especially for the fact that he's an athlete like that. He's not awful as a blocker. He's low-key good, actually, as a blocker. He had a flashy stop route and when he ran a deep stop route. He's a mid-slant runner, so, you know, whether you can flip your hips on 45-degree cuts, I did not love it for him. Good throttle down over the middle of cover 2, so he was very smart and realized that he was gaining distance in the cover 2, and he was in the right spot, so he ended up pretty much throttling down his speed to be able to remain open for longer. He shows up big time as a blocker on the goal line, which is kind of crazy for someone of his athletic profile. I would like more creativity post-cut. He had a solid zig route. Outside of the first play, he's had some issues versus press. So it really was like that first time, and then the next play, he was misapplying the same thing. So he was like, oh, let's see if lightning strikes twice. And at that moment, I lost my confidence. And as the game went on, it's like, okay, we've seen that you can do it, but I'm really still waiting for him to apply it properly. Now let's talk about Mason Taylor. His Texas A&M game was absolute dog shit. And the game versus Alabama was so much better, I threw that one out. So this is going to be, like, technically, if I wanted to grade him holistically, he'd be lower. But I do think that some players just have a bad game. And when I see that the rest of your tape does not reflect that, I will say that I'll give some people a mulligan. And Mason Taylor deserved a mulligan on that one. Because he was tight end 14 for me based off of the first grade I had of him versus Texas A&M. But continuing on versus Alabama, he has a solid initial get off. Finally, some good blocking on Jahad Campbell. He did nothing on a pull block. Much more fluid of an athlete over Texas A&M. Nice seam catch. This game is so different that I'm convinced he was not remotely close to 100% versus Texas A&M. He's a different player overall this game. Nice adjustment on a route for a big gain. I ended up posting that on X as well. Smooth athlete. It's not super crisp. So basically doesn't have very sharp routes, but it's also very smooth transitions. Great catch in traffic when sitting in a soft spot. His in routes are a bit elongated. Some awesome pass pro reps in one-on-one. So I ended up being a big fan versus Mason Taylor. Is, the more tape I watched of him. But man, watch that Texas A&M game. You will have legitimate concerns. I'm just gonna leave it as is, but I do have some concerns there. Jake Brenningstool is next. And he is actually, I had him the previous color where he used to be a tight end 1 coming into the year. I was a big fan of him, and I'm still a big fan of him, obviously. Jake Brenningstool, no one has him as a top 5 tight end. I've had him as, I think, tight end 3 coming into the year. I have him tight end 4 as of the moment. Really, really good tight end. Put on an additional 10 pounds, but he still is a little bit on the lighter side. But let's talk about his overall performance versus South Carolina. He starts out in the game in the slot. He had a stutter release at the line of scrimmage. Another tight end was subbed in for near the goal line to be able to get some work there. He's not overly athletic, but a really solid athlete. Solid job blocking even as an inline. He ended up having very super sudden hips. There we go. I said super sudden hips on a skinny post. Can work on his deceleration, but he flips his hips very, very well. He flashed a hand chop downfield, what I was talking about before with Elijah Arroyo. So it's good to see that amongst other prospects. Honestly, his best 2 traits are flipping his hips and blocking. This other tight end 11 is kind of nice too. getting held a lot. So Jake Brendel, while he's running routes, is getting held a lot versus South Carolina. What I am realizing is that he should have way better stats if he was throwing the ball more. He just ran a streak and was wide open with no target. Nice run after the catch over the middle. Contact balance is also very good. Just a very balanced player here with Jake Brendel. But of course, when you have a pretty mediocre contested catch percentage, you're probably not going to be viewed as a very top-end red zone threat. So I do understand maybe why the offensive coordinator was like, when we're in the red zone, we have somebody that we like a little bit more. Let's talk about Colson Loveland next. And we'll talk about his game versus Oregon this year. He is a really good tight end. People are like, wow, he's tight end 3. What the hell? But he is still the exact same grade he was coming into the year. So keep that in mind. He actually overperformed for how bad his offense was. So he did a great job there. And you might say, run after the catch C. What the hell? He's good after the catch. I think a lot of his success after the catch, if I'm just going to be real with y'all, is probably his speed. I didn't really see it being the moves. But let's talk about his game versus Oregon. It's a super short one. Colson Love, I mean, the offense doesn't give you very many opportunities to actually fall in love with some of these players. But he ended up dropping a catch in traffic after a nice head fake on a route. It was one of the few that he dropped this year. He ended up having a jet streak. He's a long strider. So again, you'll see the high speed, low burst usually is from people who are long striders. Good job on a pull block after missing one before. He did a poor job, or he ended up shedding a poor tackle. He did a beautiful post route, ended up posting that. Would like better run after the catch ability. Did a good job catching in traffic later on. Bottom line, you know what you're getting with Colson Loveland. I do think he's a better blocker than represented, but I also think that he is not as polished as what people think in terms of a well-rounded product. I do think he's balanced overall. I think he should play in the slot, but I also do think that his best capability is the fact that he runs routes very smoothly, and then he also is able to block. So I do like that as well. Harold Fannon's awesome. Okay, let's talk about the 2 games that mattered the most this year, which is Penn State and Texas A&M. This is going to be a long one because I love Harold Fannin. Really, really good player. But versus Penn State, great game, but okay, so continuing. Ended up writing a little note for myself there. Shout out to the quarterback for threading a needle on a seam route. He's a feisty blocker, not the most explosive out of his cuts, surprisingly less mobile than I remember. Best asset is his run after the catch. He's an eager blocker, not overly effective. He had a nice skinny post. His hard cuts seemed to be hard to execute. Nice job on 45-degree cuts. Nice use of physicality on a deep post in. Needs to reduce his instances of running into defenders and learning how to blow past them. Too much hesitation leading to a poor timing and an interception. I didn't really see a dominating performance that the stats would say, but still a really good performance. Versus Texas A&M. Another really good performance, but he did well versus the top teams. Nice quick hitch. Willing to block bigger defenders, even Scourton and also Shamar Stewart. He ended up actually doing a pretty damn good job overall, effectively blocking Shamar Stewart. Can have issues versus press. So there we go. We saw it in two games that I just brought up here. Excellent 45-degree cut on a bended out route. So he ended up pretty much doing 2 45-degree cuts and making it into a 90 rather than just one solid stick your foot in and make it a 90. A solid, not elite stop out leading to a pass breakup. So we love that there for him to have that ability to be able to do a stop. But, it is what it is. Continuing on, though. Would say that he is quicker than fast. Would like a little more physicality on his cuts. Nearly pancaked a linebacker edge on a block downhill. He was thrown off because he ended up getting carried away. So I don't know if I posted this one, but he ended up driving the linebacker edge, he literally almost destroyed the guy, but he ended up just continuing to push him for too long and then ended up being thrown off. I'm like, dude, you had him. You just need to plant him into the ground, brother. And didn't do that, but I love seeing the fact that he could do it. But continuing on. His stop routes do seem to be a bit harder for him. So stop routes as in those 90-degree cuts, as well as the deep comebacks and all of that. As I say that, he does a nice hitch route, but I think he needs to sell the fake more. He was the tight end on the screen was called back for holding. Gotta love that. Lunged into a block with a little bit more restraint. So ferocity comes sometimes with a lack of restraint. You gotta find a nice balance there. Great seal block on outside zone. One looks good too. A lot of really fun players for Bowling Green. I like them a lot. Ludicrous tight end flashing run after the catch ability. So these bended out 45-degree cuts are insanely smooth. So basically what I mean by that is rather than doing this and running out, what they do is boom, boom, right? Like pretty much 45-degree cut. And then from here, you're going to do it again. Another 45-degree cut. So like boom, boom. But it's extremely smooth. He flashed a truck as well, a hit stick. Great patience and vision downfield. 81-2 is good. What the F is this Bowling Green team? Another touchdown was lost because of poor quarterback play. Took a wheel route too far inside and tried to compensate for the press coverage, leading to an unnecessary overthrow and missed opportunity. Nice slant from the boundary. 16 is also fire as fuck. Catching traffic, but he did not get deep enough on 4th and short. You can tell he got hurt. He lost a lot of his explosiveness. He runs a nice skinny post and had the ball sail over his head for an interception. Could have been another touchdown. The pep is back in his step as the game went on. Great post route for a big gain. He used physicality to lean in and generate separation on an out route. And I was a big fan of that. Overall, ended up saying I was a huge fan. He's 230. I think they need to add 5 to 10 more pounds, but his ferocity is awesome. His athleticism overall is awesome. And this dude is going to be a really good tight end. I had to drop him 2 points because of the fact he's 230, but if I did not have that it factor, he would be tight end 1. But there is someone who is tight end 1, and a reason I'm wearing a Penn State jersey right now. And that's Tyler Warren. He needs no real introduction, but let's just talk about his game versus Oregon here. He started out the game out wide. He found a nice soft spot, great use of physicality to generate separation. He's not the best straight line athlete, but he feels like he's an always open kind of guy. Solid outside zone block. He can pick up speed, but definitely not a plus athlete. Plus athlete in terms of speed and acceleration. Like I do think the small bursts of cuts, like that's where I put it more into route running, but off the line acceleration, I do think is a little bit out of whack. Beautiful slant drag. He drug a defender for an extra yard. Excellent use of downfield release to swat the arm on a fade and get good positioning. He's honestly been a really solid route runner. He pancaked a defender, has such a good awareness of the pace of the play in a way I don't see many players do in college football. He runs the perfect tempo and seems to understand when he's open versus when he is not. Big fan of him. Does not hold when blocking, yet he blocks well. That's why you got the A+ there. He's able to shed contact and deliver the boom. Shout out to the Costco guys. Mr. Reliable. Dropped a one-hand snag, but was very close to catching it. Skinny post king. One of the best blockers I've studied at tight end. Some plays do feel a little low effort, though. So, I mean, Tyler Warren, one of the best prospects that you'll find out there. Like, he's not the most flashy athlete on planet Earth, and that's why, if he were a more flashy athlete, he would have a similar grade to Brock Bowers. But that's what keeps him out of that conversation. People are saying, oh, he's on that level of Brock Bowers. He's completely different. Like, we're not talking about him in that Brock Bowers realm, because Brock Bowers is the type of guy to take a slant to the house. Like, he's someone who can outrun everybody as well. Tyler Warren is going to be a superstar, but a little bit more reserved. In the right role, he's a blue chip player. In the right team, he's a blue chip player. And I am so excited to see him get that opportunity. I will be pissed if he gets drafted by the wrong team. So the Jets, please do not draft him. But this guy's going to be a stud. I'm super excited for him. And thank you so much for watching. I love you. See you on the far side. Peace.